Welcome once again. I'm Charlie Greenberg, your host and moderator for Digital Business Demos. Thanks for joining us today as we continue to provide live business demos that focus on different digital transformation and platform strategies, and in particular demonstrate different components and products within Software AG's digital business platform. So today we'll focus on IT transformation, but specifically how it drives brilliant innovation in manufacturing. And in just a moment, we'll be hearing from Software AG's Global Industry Director for Manufacturing and Transportation, Sean Riley. And providing today's live demo is David Ferry, who's the Senior Product Manager for Alphabet. And by the way, driving IT transformation is why Software AG is rated as a customer-centric leader in many innovative and digital technology categories. Additionally, we have more than 4,300 employees, $1 billion in annual revenue, and we can cite over 70% of the Global 1,000 as customers as well, and those customers include over 2 million developers at leading organizations who have adopted Software AG products to innovate solutions and build applications cross-industry, cross-private and public sectors, and who rely on Software AG to help complete their journeys as digital enterprises through the end-to-end capabilities of the digital business platform. Also, please keep in mind that following Sean's and David's presentation, we will provide a Q&A session. So, as usual, please use the WebEx Q&A box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen at any point in time during the presentation for any questions and comments. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Sean Riley.
Thanks, Charlie. So I'd like to start out just looking at what is happening across the industry in general, as well as citing a couple other industries just as reference to show that this particular trend of creating disruptive businesses, specifically disruptive businesses that are going after traditional incumbents, is not only becoming the norm, but it's actually increasing. And we're going to take a look at a couple businesses that this trend is disrupted. These insights have been provided by CB Insights, who was kind enough to create these specific graphics. And the first graphic looks at what's happening to Honeywell, a traditional consumer products, heavy industry company. Their business is being attacked by new startups with new delivery models providing new technology. Additionally, we're seeing this in the transportation industry as well. If you look at a similar insight in terms of the different offerings that FedEx has that are being disrupted. And then lastly, and most importantly, in terms of consumer products, a stalwart like Procter & Gamble has seen its different business lines around the globe attacked by disruptive businesses that are coming to market with not necessarily new products, but in most cases, different business models. And the best example of that is looking at Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club has eaten huge amounts of margin away from Gillette simply because they were able to forego traditional retail channels and deliver direct to the consumer. And they were able to do this quickly in a nimble fashion with new supply chains that were purpose-built for this offering. Whereas Procter & Gamble, to match, has just recently come out with a subscription-based price for their Gillette razors because they had to deal with legacy IT systems, legacy processes, legacy supply chain practices that were still important and still had to be managed, but had to be dealt with simply to compete. And there's one similarity between all of these disruptive businesses, and that is they don't have a legacy IT infrastructure to deal with. They're able to build their infrastructure from the ground up, which does give them some advantage in terms of speed, but not necessarily a lasting long-term advantage if the incumbents are able to capitalize on their existing IT applications. Secondly, if you look at a statistic by Deloitte, high IT spend doesn't necessarily lead to success. However, directed IT spend that's controlled and placed in a very specific manner that supports business strategy does lead to success. And you can see that there is quite a difference in percent between global companies and the best U.S. high-performing companies in terms of IT spend. So what's really driving this requirement for digital transformation, specifically IT transformation for manufacturing? We talked about the new business models, but let's say, for example, you're a heavy industry manufacturer. What's happening in that particular segment that's driving this particular change, and that is the move to an outcome-based pricing model for field services, or perhaps even the bundling of products and services in a single contract. While that sounds relatively simple, if you look behind the curtain in terms of being able to deliver on that, it's hugely complex and requires the synchronization of IT systems with business processes, with people, to happen automatically and continuously. Or if we look at, again, the direct-to-consumers for consumer packaged goods, it sounds simple, but rather than moving pallets or truckloads of product, moving to a single item, it requires an entirely new process to support it. And then, of course, we can't forget about leveraging everybody's favorite topic, the Internet of Things, or the industrial Internet of Things. And it's fairly easy to hook up a sensor and plug it into a cloud-based IoT platform. It's a little bit more difficult to capitalize on that data and leverage it as a unique business offering. And that's where we're really seeing the need for the IT section of the business to become focused, to become nimble, to become agile, all while reducing costs and freeing up capital to be used in other parts of the business. While it's all well and good to talk about this, it's not exactly easy to do. And these specific challenges, they can be overcome with effort. They can be overcome with just, good old-fashioned grunt work. But the real issue is, how can you continuously overcome these particular challenges? And how can you ensure that you are acting reliably in the short and long term? Some other methods that have been used have been focused on how can I bring in a consultant to take a look at my IT application landscape, identify any particular redundant applications, and then rationalize them as needed. That's great, but that happens to be a snapshot in time. Other companies have looked at, well, if I just keep this on an Excel-based system in a document on a SharePoint server somewhere that's accessible by many, that way it can be updated and I can handle it in terms of that manner as well. Both of which are viable options, but neither of which truly capitalize on the full value of being able to transform the IT operations of the company to better support business strategy, to become one of those companies that's able to easily direct spend towards critical business projects by having the right capabilities that synchronize with business needs, allowing IT to become nimble, agile, as well as extraordinarily cost effective. So what we've seen for success is a core group of 8 capabilities that ensures both short-term success, i.e. immediately being able to rationalize the IT portfolio, as well as long-term success, guaranteeing control, governance, and risk management over the long-term IT portfolio so that conversations can be had with the business in terms of the costs of risk avoidance as well as other options in terms of how much IT risk is acceptable to the business at a particular price point. In some areas, some levels of risk may be completely acceptable because they're not going to impact the overall value chain significantly if there's a failure. In other issues, for example, on a production line or on a IoT sensor that might be attached to someone's heart monitor if you're a medical device provider, any level of risk or downtime or failure might be completely unacceptable because of the ramifications of that. However, having this information and having the ability to govern the entire portfolio over the long term allows for IT departments to have that direct conversation and have that conversation with data, which allows for a better outcome that's not based on emotions, it's not based on theory, it's based on what's happening across the IT portfolio today. So we're going to show you some of our methods for dealing with these particular issues, as well as ensuring success along these capabilities. But the real reason is, why sit on this webinar? Why listen to Software AG today? And it's because we've done this before. We've done this with a large number of complex manufacturers around the world, and we've been able to drive success, both in the short term, from releasing millions upon millions of dollars over the first several months, but also over the long term by giving those particular companies the tools they need to manage this transformation, both now as well as into the future. And it's that future-proofing that ensures long-term success. It guarantees directed spend, and it allows IT departments to unleash the operating expenditures that are locked up inside of application maintenance, that are locked up in terms of directing personnel to maintain applications, that are locked up sometimes in hardware for applications that can't be lifted and shifted to the cloud, or allowing for cloud lift and shifts, moving, and that's moving applications from your on-premise location out to the cloud faster and easier to move to that subscription-based rather than the capitalized hardware-based model of IT expenditures. So for the long term, Software AG has been a leader in multiple quadrants that support these particular capabilities. We've been a leader for the last several years, and we plan on ensuring that we invest in our products to make sure we're going to be a leader over the next several years. And that's just a nice barometer to ensure that the technology is stable, the technology is workable, and the technology is going to be around in the long term for whatever way you choose to digest it. Now let's talk about the technology itself. And David Ferry is going to be kind enough to show us exactly how we can go about leveraging technology to transform information technology resources for manufacturers.
Okay, thanks, Sean. And I just want to share my screen. Hopefully that's coming up now. To be able to demonstrate the product Alphabet, Software AG solution for enterprise architecture and IT portfolio management, and how we can use Alphabet to meet the challenges of IT transformation that Sean was talking about in his presentation. Things such as how do you get reliable information to make the right decisions, or how can you identify overlap and redundancy and then get rid of that redundancy to be agile and to be ready for the things that you have to be getting done in the digital world. Here we are actually looking at Alphabet and the interface. It's a HTML5 interface, and here we're in a Chrome browser, but it's tested for all the major browsers. And what we're actually looking at here is a dashboard. And in this dashboard, we actually are showing what we call our process-driven EA and IT integrated IT portfolio management approach. So what we see here is a process that starts on the left-hand side with strategy analysis, looking at your capabilities, looking at the ideas that have come into the organization, analyzing those, coming up with a portfolio of demands, which you then consolidate. Then you do your architecture road mapping. You make the architectures for the solutions. And after you've done that and you understand the cost and the impact of what you want to get done, you look at the projects, you prioritize them, you plan them, and then you monitor these projects and the other portfolios that you have. And this is a continuous process to ensure that you get the optimal delivery. The important thing about this is it's a process, and this is one of the ways we get reliable information, because the different stakeholders involved in IT transformation, they're using Alphabet as part of the stage gates for this processes, for planning, for looking at the architectures, for getting approval, for prioritizing projects. And as part of that job, they're then maintaining information on those projects and applications and technologies and strategies. And that's one way we get reliable information, by using that information in the day-to-day work that we do. The other way we do it is having a repository which is integrated, that has the different assets such as applications and technologies and processes and information. And this repository is transparent to the different stakeholders so that you can not only maintain your application roadmaps and your application portfolio, but you can look at the technology roadmaps, or you can look at the process roadmaps and see that the things that you're planning are not in conflict with the things that the other people and the other stakeholders are planning. And that's another way to ensure you get good, reliable information. Now we're logged on as a user called customer, and he has different profiles. We see here he has one, for example, as data entry, one as an infrastructure architect, one as an enterprise architect. Typically you'd only have one profile, but the important thing about this is it gives each user the look and feel that they need to do their job with the right data and right functionality. Now I want to talk a bit more about the reliable data, and to do that I'm going to look for a particular application in the repository. It's to do with equipment management. This showcases a large manufacturer, and they maintain equipment for their customers. What we'll notice here is that when we do the search, we get back not only applications, but the search goes across all the different objects. So we get business capabilities and processes, market products. I want to look at one application I want to look at is called EquipMan, this one here. It supports equipment management, especially on customer sides. And one thing I'd just like to point out about the data that we have is that we have some base data here. We understand which business capability it supports, and we'll be looking at that a bit closer in the next part of the demo. We understand the life cycle. So it's actually an application that's been around for a while, but it's planned to be phased out in just under 2 years. And we also understand this is an application that has a certain amount of complexity. Yeah, it's a core equipment management solution that has things like in-stream analytics, and it has various business supporting different processes and organizations, quite a few integration points, 22, and quite a few technical components. And we also see that 3 of these components are outdated, so that was something we'd want to address. And we have here an architecture diagram of the application with the different integration points and the data going across that. So this is the type of data we're maintaining. And important as part of the maintenance is we see here the responsibilities. Now this is a complex application, so we see it has an architect, a data manager, and an operator and an owner. For other applications, it might just be an application owner or an IT owner and a business owner. That's part of the operating model you have to maintain the data and to be part of the processes that are involved in managing that application. What we also see here are survey participants, and that's another way of getting reliable data. You can send out surveys. And the surveys could be to get base data, but you can also get assessment data. Things like, is the usability of this application good? Does it have the right business functionality? And that's the sort of reliable data you want to get from your stakeholders to be able to make the right decisions. In terms of managing the data, we have wizards. So we see here basic form entry, and if we do something wrong in terms of the data entry, then it will also tell us. So we can manage the type of, we can manage the sort of business rules on the data that needs to be entered. And this helps us to ensure that the data is of good quality. What we can also do is offer graphical editing, and this is very configurable. For example, we could edit the life cycle quite quickly, in a form way, or in a graphic way where we just move it backwards and forwards and change it. And this is a typical sort of wizard-based editing that we offer here. The advantage of this is that the wizard has different steps, and the different steps could also go to different stakeholders using the workflow. Now, the last part, to talk about how we maintain good data, I'd just like to just point out this data quality report, which tells you whether certain things are being maintained well or not. And this will give you the basis for a point system that says, okay, certain parts of the application portfolio are well documented. I can rely on that for decision making. Other parts, we still have work to do. So with that, I'd like to go back to the dashboard and talk about the next part, or the next challenge that Sean talked about. And that's the challenge of understanding which business capabilities are supported by what IT. And to do that, I'd like to drill down from this dashboard into a part of the product that has a cockpit, which is actually something that a high-level application portfolio manager would be looking at. So what we see in this cockpit, if we look at the two reports at the bottom, we see actually the planned number of applications, and that's based on the life cycles and the applications that we've got maintained in the repository. And we see there is actually, moving forward, a plan to reduce them. What we also see here are the application costs for our application portfolio. And the light blue is the operating costs, and that's actually what it costs to run the applications. And the dark blue are the project costs. What are we investing in the applications? And what we see here is that historically we've got a problem. The operating costs have gone up quite steeply, and that squeezed what we can invest, which is not a good place to be if you're doing IT transformation and if you're trying to beat your competitors and you're digitalizing and you want to do Internet of Things. So there is a plan moving forward to actually reduce the costs. And what I'd like to do is to understand in detail where those costs are coming from. And for that, I'm going to drill into the business capability map. Now, this is the business capabilities of our company, which is actually a heavy equipment company, ABC Machines. And we see here the top level capabilities at the top of this report. So we have corporate management, we have market development, which is marketing and sales. We have product development, which is the strategic product marketing and management. And we have the delivery, which is how do we get those products and services to our customers. And then we have the support, the cross-functional supporting services such as HR and IT, and some oversight functions such as quality management and risk management. So this is our company and the things it needs to do to make money. And each of these is broken down then into sub-capabilities. So that under delivery, we have things like equipment installation, equipment management, procurement, manufacturing, etc. Now, we see that on this capability map, there is actually more information. And to see what type of information, I'll just blend in the legend. What we see is, one, the size of the box for each of the sub-capabilities is telling us how much the applications are costing us to run. So if we look at this, we see that something like contact management here, sales management and customer management here under delivery. These are large boxes, they're expensive capabilities, whereas equipment financing is actually has a lower cost. What we also see is two other pieces of information which are from the business and business assessments. One is how critical it is for the organization, and it's an assessment that could be done every year and would change. But what we see at the moment is that customer equipment management is very critical. Customer management is very critical. These are the things that they want to invest in. What we also see are the things that are differentiating, saying which of the capabilities help us to beat our competitors. So again, customer equipment management here in the middle, it's got a big pie chart which is almost full. This is very differentiating. This is something we want to win the market with, whereas something like contact management is less differentiating. The important thing about this is it gives us information with which we can start a strategic discussion between business and IT. So if we look at this capability contact management on the left under market development, we see it's a capability which is not considered critical, not considered differentiating, but it does have high costs. And the question is, why are we spending money there? What can we do to reduce it and maybe get more costs to invest in something critical like customer equipment management? Now, we want to understand not only the capabilities at this level, but what's the IT behind each capability. And to understand that, we're going to drill down into the capability. And here we are at the application portfolio for the capability customer management, which we drew down into. And we see here an overview of the landscape of the applications, on the left-hand side for this capability. We see the different applications, we see the integration points and some of the data that's moving between them. More important for a discussion that we're having today is the one about the application costs. We understand that we see here for this actual capability that the costs have also gone up very steeply. Planning forward, they're going to go down. But what we also see in this graph is not only that the costs have gone up and are going to be reduced, we see the cost drivers. Because in this bar chart, each of the stacks in each bar is represented by a different color. It's actually a different application. So this green application here is actually CRM AI. This gray application, CRM CSS. And this application, Marfo Portal, which is the sort of pink one at the top. These three applications actually make up over 3/4 of the cost for this capability. So if we are serious about tackling the costs issue here, we have to look at those three applications. And that is, in fact, what is planned to be done. If we look at this, we see that the green application is being phased out, and the gray application, the costs of it are being reduced, and that's how we're going to hit our cost goals in terms of cost reduction. Another view we have here is also the classic portfolio approach. And here we've done an assessment. The assessment top-down from business is being done. How aligned is each application to the business needs in terms of functionality, usability, these sort of things. And then we've done a technical assessment on how aligned is it to our technology strategy, how up-to-date is the technology, this sort of thing. And this helps us to decide if we're going to consolidate applications, which are the applications we want to keep and invest in. And those would be the ones at the top right in this portfolio diagram. And at the bottom left would be the ones we'd rather get rid of. Now that's, with that I'd like to close the part where we talk about how IT supports business capabilities. What I'd like to do is now talk about the third challenge that Sean mentioned, and that's the one about IT overlap and redundancy. And for that, I'm going to go to a different cockpit for this business capability. There's one here called overlap analysis. And here we have two simple reports. One of it is identifying application overlaps, and the other one project overlaps. And I'll just drill down into the application overlaps. We see that the CRM CSS application is the one that has the most overlaps. And we can open this and see that these overlaps, most of them are with another application called CRM Opti Retail. Now these overlaps are actually quite broad brush. This is actually saying, does this application support the same process and the same organization as the one that we're looking at? And in this case, we see that CRM Opti Retail support the same sort of organizations and processes. So it is an indication of whether this application is going to be, is a possible candidate for redundancy, for phasing out, and to be replaced by this one to consolidate. Now, if we could get more detail by drilling into the application, and if we do that, there's another overlap report. And these overlap reports, actually, one is based on which services the application offers, and one is based on which data the application offers. And again, we see that, for example, the CRM CSS is offering over 90% overlap with the Salesforce application in terms of the business services that it's offering, which is another indication that we could consolidate our applications. Now, having identified the overlap, we want to also understand how we could then develop a strategy to actually then phase out that overlap, to actually consolidate to a particular application. And to do that, I'll go back to the dashboard and drill into this landscape view of the capability. Now, in this landscape view, we see the applications again, and we see across the top the processes they support, and we see here the organizations that they're supporting on the left in the y-axis. Again, we identify here some potential overlap, because if we look at the process branding here, we see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different applications that are actually offering branding across the 4 organizations. And that's a classic indicator that there could be consolidation potential. So what we want to do is come up with a strategy. And we can actually blend in different strategies. The one I want to blend in is one called Consolidation Strategies to Salesforce. And if we do this, then we see that this light gray boxes are being phased in. And this is actually the end state we'd like to reach. This is where we want to go to. And basically, we're going to consolidate to the Salesforce application across the different processes and across the different organizations. So this is quite a radical consolidation plan. The only exception here is with branding, where we have a second application called Marfo Portal, which has got some very special capabilities we couldn't put into Salesforce. On top of the strategy, we could also introduce a view that says how many steps do we want to take to get there. And we'll see that for this organization, we have a rollout program which anticipates having 2 versions of Salesforce, whereas this organization, we're going to see 3 organizations of Salesforce. And we can create these roadmaps and show them in different perspectives, and this is a way that we can talk to the stakeholders about what we intend to do and get them on board with our planning, and also get them ready for when we want to put the new applications into place. Now, the next challenge that Sean talked about was how to align enterprise needs with, and how to align the investments to our enterprise needs. And to take a look at this, I'm going to look at the strategy analysis. In this strategy analysis, on the left-hand side, we actually have a breakdown of our strategy. So for our company, the high-level vision is actually to become a market leader in IoT enablement. And this has been broken down into different goals, such as develop digital technology strategy. And one of these is actually to provide outstanding customer excellence. And this goal has been broken down itself into different objectives, such as ensure seamless customer interactions. And this, again, is broken down into strategic themes. Thus, we can look at the strategy and break it down into manageable parts. And at the strategic theme level, we also allocate a budget. And this helps us as an enterprise to be agile. This enables each strategic theme owner to then decide on the priorities for that strategic theme. And if we decide that this strategic theme is very important today for our strategy, we would increase the budget, and if not, we would decrease it. Another way which we can align our investments to our needs is also to identify which projects are actually helping us in reaching our goals. And to do this, we're going to have a look at this capability map again. And here we see the capability map. And what we notice is that certain capabilities are actually indicated with purple. And these capabilities are the ones that have been identified as being critical to this strategic theme, the ones that we need to change to get improvement in our real-time customer interactions. So we have things like customer management, order management, sales management, market analysis, and contact management. And these are the areas where we're touching the customer, where we have the sort of customer experience interactions. What we also have are the projects from our portfolio of projects for the strategic theme. And these are shown in green, and they're on top of the capabilities, and that means that these projects are changing these capabilities. So we see here that our customer management, which is one of our core capabilities for this strategic theme, is indeed being changed and impacted by 4 projects. And we'd obviously look at that to see that they're going in the right direction and there's no conflicts, but it shows that we're working on these. What we also notice is that we have critical capabilities that need to be changed that aren't currently being changed by any project. And similarly, we have projects which are changing capabilities that aren't considered critical. Now, this might be right, it might be something we want to do, but obviously this sort of view is an indicator that we might want to analyze that in more detail and maybe reprioritize our projects to align to the critical capabilities for our strategic theme. Now, the last challenge that Sean talked about was the challenge of monitoring and prioritizing. Prioritizing our initiatives and then monitoring their implementation. And to look at that, I'd like to go across now to look at the funnel for this strategic theme. Now, on this strategic theme, we have a funnel, and this is a funnel of requests for things to be changed. And in the funnel, we have 2 types of requests. We have here ideas, and we have here demands and epics. Now, the difference between the 2 is that if we look at one of these, if we look at the ideas, then the ideas are things that have come in through our ideation portal, and these are rough diamonds. They've not been analyzed in detail. They're not being created by architects or the sort of people that understand the business, such as business analysts. They're just ideas that have come in for particular changes to a product or for a process or to an application. Now, these ideas would then be analyzed, and the part of that, and in that analysis, they'd actually be changed then into demands and epics, which is where the analysis work has already been done. So if we look at one of these epics, for example, we drew down into one of these, then we'll see that as part of the analysis, we've then looked at which impacts this epic is going to have. So it's going to impact certain market products, our medium generator, mobile generator, and small generator. It's impacting applications such as our dealer parts manager and the customer portal. And it's also going to impact certain business capabilities such as customer management and delivery management. So we've done the sort of architecture analysis to say what are we going to change with this epic, but what we've also done is an investment analysis. We see here an estimated monetary cost, and if there are savings or if there's expected new revenues, we see also an estimated revenue. And this is not a business case, this is just a first estimation, but it gives us something with which we can compare the epics and demands as part of our prioritization approach. So if we go back and look at this, the different demands and epics are also shown in this report, and in this report we see them ordered by, in this case, in revenue, and we see also the cost. So we get an idea of the whether we have big items here in terms of cost and savings, or whether they're going to be a bunch of small items, and this will help us to do the prioritization. And we can also compare this to the budget we have, which is what we're doing here, and understand whether we can do all of these. We have a budget here in purple, and the different epics and demands, what they're going to cost. And we see here that we actually do have to do some sort of prioritization. And we do this by looking at other aspects such as strategic value. Some demands don't have strategic value, they're just operative, or other sorts of assessments that are actually then done on the demands and epics. And this will give us then an idea of the right projects to do and which projects and which epics and demands will be implemented by those projects. Now, as the last few, what I want to do then is look at the aspect of monitoring those projects. And to do that, I'm going to drill down into the active portfolio of projects for this area. And here we're looking at these. And one thing we'll notice is that there are two types of project here. I'll just go down to the first level. You'll see that some of them are in green and some of them are in sort of a bluey color, I guess that is. And the difference between these is that this is a project and this is actually an agile release train. So if you're doing agile approach, obviously that's very different to the project approach. In a project, you have a fixed budget, a fixed set of deliverables, you have an expected time to deliver them, and you have fixed resources for the project that have been assigned to the project for the duration of the project. If we're looking at agile development, then you don't have that. You have a fixed team of people, you have a funnel of ideas and epics and demands, and for sprint, you decide which ones to do. And for this reason, when we're monitoring these projects, when we monitor the projects, we look at the euros, we look at the actual cost situation, we look at the resource situation and the schedule situation to get an idea of the projects running well. Whereas for the agile release trains, we look at the story points that have been allocated and the ones that have been implemented to understand are we doing well or not. And we can also look at this not only for the release train as a whole, but for each of the program increments that we planned for this release train. So here we have a way of monitoring the different projects. And with that, I'd like to close the demo part and hand back to Sean. And just recapping, we looked at the 5 different areas that Sean talked about. We looked at how we can get reliable information to support decisions, how IT supports business capabilities, how to identify overlap and redundancy, how to align our investments with the needs of the company, and last but not least, how to prioritize and monitor the investments that we're doing in terms of their projects and agile release trains.
All right. Thank you, David. Very much appreciated. In regards to what's coming up next, we have demos regarding multiple different topics every Wednesday. And we hope to see you at more of them depending upon your particular IT requirements. You can also learn more about IT transformation by requesting a report by IT Research to request a custom demo for yourself to go on YouTube and check out some of the work that David has posted up there, or to request a conversation with either myself or David. We'll also be opening up the session to comment or questions now. So if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and list them in the chat, if that's correct, Charlie.
That is correct. There's a specific Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen below the chat, but if we see them in chat, we'll certainly answer them, ask and answer. And let me first thank Sean and David very much for this fantastic demonstration and presentation. I think it covered a lot of major points in terms of manufacturing, and of course that was our purpose. And I'd also like to thank those people who have already sent us questions. So let us begin. Are there any advantages to being an established company managing a legacy IT environment? It sounds as if to be really successful, you need to be a new company and not necessarily have a legacy environment. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, so is it okay, David, if I take that particular question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so you know, we talked about in the beginning those disruptive businesses that are impacting the environment. And the positive side of those, again, is that they don't have that legacy environment to manage. However, what incumbents and existing multinational manufacturers have is operational expenditures that can be freed up for fast cash to fund transformation initiatives at a rate that's higher than the funding level that's typically available for those disruptive companies. Simply because when you're looking at products, to grow with products, it requires capital to fund ever-increasing inventory amounts. That capital can either come from the issue of stock, from the capital input from VCs or private equity companies, or it can come from IT landscape transformation, so rationalizing applications that aren't needed to support the business. Now, every company has a cost hurdle that they have to be able to cross without issue. The trick is being able to rationalize those applications so quickly that not only are you able to cross that particular threshold in far less than a year, but you're able to surpass it to free up that needed capital for immediate transformation endeavors, as well as be able to understand and guide how my capital expenditures, whether it's maintenance, whether it's vendor contract renewals, are going to occur in the future so that I can better guide my operating expenditure needs and then be able to direct them. So that's where incumbents with legacy environments do have a leg up because they have access to capital slightly quicker than a startup does.
Thank you, Sean. David, here's a demo question. So in the demo, you showed strategy breakdown from vision to goal, et cetera. Can this be changed to match the way my company or the questioner's company breaks down the strategy?
Yes, that actually is not only possible, it's also very typical. Many customers will change that because each customer has tackled this in a different way. And basically the breakdown that we saw in terms, it had 4 levels and each one had the vision, the goal, I think business objective and then initiative. You can, with the configuration, decide how many levels you want to have. You might want to just have 3 or 5, depending on your company or more. And you can also decide for each level what that is called, whether it's called a goal or an objective or whatever. And you can also, for each level, decide what type of reports, what type of cockpits, etc. you want to see at that level, and what types of processes you might want behind that strategy. And this type of configuration is all done using the GUI. There's no programming or coding involved. And most customers learn how to do that quite quickly and would do it themselves after initial training.
Thank you. And by the way, to attendees, if a question occurs to you after we've concluded the presentation, you'll note the email addresses of both Sean and David today, so please feel free to reach out to them if something occurs to you after we've concluded. Moving along, you talked about how to get reliable information. Can you integrate to other repositories or systems to achieve this?
I guess I'll take this question as well, if it's a product question. Yes, definitely. It's actually something I forgot to talk about during the demo. It's actually something that a lot of customers do, and they would pick up information on the performance of the landscape, such as the cost information that we saw for the applications and for the capabilities. That is imported from the ERP system, or if it's a project, it might be imported from a project portfolio management system. These are the typical integrations. Another very common one is an integration to IT service management. Basically, these integrations, for some of them, we provide a standard template, which would usually be changed because usually the product we're integrating to is also configured. But also, we provide something called ADIF, which is an integration layer. And this integration layer has both batch, like an extract, transform, load sort of approach, as well as a REST API for system-to-system online integration. And this type of configuration is, again, supported by the UI and is actually quite easy to do. And again, many customers do their own integrations. They don't rely on our services to do that.
If a company is not into a big project or IT transformation, not creating a disruptive business model, but is just looking for a year-over-year incremental improvement, are we still having the same conversation?
Yeah, I think you are having the same conversation in terms of not looking at, you know, I want to change the world, but I want to stick with my existing business model. I just want to get better at what I'm doing. And that's where you can focus on, again, that myopic cost control of looking at how do I deliver year over year quantifiable cost savings to my IT foundation while providing the same or higher levels of service to the business. And that's where you don't need to digitally transform, but you can take that capital and give it back to shareholders or use it to, again, relieve some of the other cost concerns in other areas of the business.
All right, I think we're coming to our final question. There are various views on application IT costs. Do you also support other perspectives such as risk?
Yeah, I'll take that. Definitely. And risk is actually one of the ones we provide quite a lot of support for, also in terms of offering support for controls and for risk surveys and assessments, that sort of thing. And we would show the results in similar reports to the ones we saw for application costs. So there might be, you know, capability maps highlighted by color by risk, or you'd have reports that expose the risk through the stack from technology to business process, that sort of thing. And we also have something we delivered last year, support from a risk and compliance perspective for the new General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR regulation of the European Union, which is also something that's important to any company, whether in Europe or not, if they do business with European citizens or people that live in Europe. So yeah, and the sort of just other perspectives we also support are things like architectural alignment, agility alignment, and many others. And customers can also on the fly create new KPIs on or assessment indicators on the different objects on the projects and technologies and stuff, and create their own portfolio analysis for that without doing any configuration. So it's something that we see as being very important for this portfolio management approach.
So as we come to the end of the presentation, any final comments, Sean or David?
No, nothing for me.
All right.
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, and it was great and good. Thank you very much. Our thanks again to Sean Riley and David Ferry for today's presentation. You can see what's coming up. I'll just translate a little bit. Next week, the subject is actually the title is a continuation of an earlier DevOps presentation, so please feel free to join us again next week. In the meantime, thanks for attending and have a great rest of the day.